A new Trackmania season is upon us with the release of the Spring 24 campaign, and that of course means yet another tier list video. Except this season and moving forward, I will no longer be using the tier list aspect, but I will still continue to rate every track on the +2- rating scale. I will also continue ranking every single track against each other from their respective track number across all seasons, for example every track 1 against every track 1. This will allow us to see in what my opinion are the best and worst campaigns, as well as if I feel we are trending up or down in terms of track and campaign quality. I have also added a new track strength qualifier for my rankings, so each track in each series will get a strength rating of 1 to 5, with 1 being what I believe is the strongest track in each series, and 5 being the weakest. This for now does not affect any scoring, but will at least give some help to tracks that I think are good but still get a poor ranking. So, will the Spring 24 season turn around what I thought was a slight downtrend in track quality from last season, or will it be able to turn things around? Well, we're about to find out as we started out here with the White Series. I feel like I've said this about every track number 1s in these videos, but I generally don't find them to be all that much fun, as they generally just don't have a whole lot of substance to them, and you can include this track number 1 in that as well, with it only having a couple of very minor turns. With that being said though, this is certainly not a bad track, and it got a plus rating from me, and it fell right in the middle of my rankings at spot number 8. I feel like track number 2 could have been and should have been at least a little bit better than what it is, but as it currently stands, I just don't really care for the jumps on this track because of that upward trajectory when you jump and the flat landing on the other side. The landings are just extremely unsmooth. They introduce a little bit of randomness that I don't really care for in the track, which also in turn makes it a little less fun to hunt. So track number 2 here got a neutral rating from me, and the ranking was pretty poor at spot number 11. Track number 3 is honestly pretty lucky that it's in one of the weakest categories in the White Series because it's a pretty mediocre track in my opinion. The entire thing can be driven with action keys and a few small releases, and that's pretty much it for the track. I mean, sure, you can probably hunt this one for specific steering percentages if you want to, but I find that to be even less fun than what the track already is. So yeah, I give this one a neutral rating, and it got very lucky here with 8th place. Track number 4 is a very good track, especially for the White Series, and I'd say my only complaint about this one and for a lot of White tracks in general is just the length of the track. If you lengthen this one out by about 5 seconds and add an extra turn in it, it could have been even better, but because it's so short, only coming in at 26 seconds long, it just does not have that extra to put it over the edge. It still got a plus rating for me and came at 5th place in my rankings, so still a very nice track. Track number 5 gives us our best look at the new strength rating, because I do believe track number 5 is a better track than track number 4, but because track 5s are generally a stronger category than 4, this one does get a little bit worse ranking, falling at spot number 7 versus track number 4 spot number 5. As for this track, like I said, I do like it, and my rating for it is another plus. One thing I'm a bit iffy on is the plastic wall rides, as they used a couple last season, and there are quite a few in this season as well. I'm not sure if I really care for them. So before we go over how well the Spring 24 season did in this White Series, we're going to go over how these scores are calculated. So because there have been 16 seasons, that means there are 16 tracks per track number. For example, 16 track number 1s. If I rate you the highest track number 1, I'll give the track 16 points. If you are my worst rated track, you are just going to get 1. With that 16 total possible points per track times the 5 tracks in the series, gets you a total possible score out of 80. And with that said, we can see that the Spring 24 season scored a total of 46 points, puts it in 6th place in a tie with last season's Winter 24 season. While 6th place is technically an above average score, I would say the series was more so just an average one, as we have a lot of different seasons here kind of packed into the middle with only a few points difference, and down to 44 points, that's only a 2-point difference between 5 different tracks, which is pretty much nothing. So yeah, definitely not a bad series of tracks, but like I said in this video and last season as well, I wish some of the white tracks were lengthened out a little bit and they were at least 30 seconds in length, if not 35, and add some extra difficulty from tracks 1 to 3 and have them more like track number 4s and 5s. I think that would go a long way. But that'll do it for the white series. Let's move on to the green series. Track number 6 is definitely a good track, but it is definitely also a victim of its length here. Being under 30 seconds long, especially for a green track, is a pretty tough spot to be. You could have easily put this one in the white series at like track number 3, and it would have done very well in that position. But again, for a green track, I think it's just too simple and just too short. With that being said, I do think it is a good track as I gave it a plus, but it fell in the middle of the rankings at spot number 8. Track number 7 is a fine track for what it is, but honestly, I'm getting a little bit bored of the wood surface in general, because either you get a track like this where you're kind of just going for precision, and any personal bests are going to be extremely incremental because there's really not much you can do differently on these, or you have a wet wood track, which are admittedly a little bit more fun, but still get old for me rather quickly. So yeah, this track still gets a plus for me. It's a fine track, but the ranking here is also another middle of the road one at spot number 8. Wood just needs a little bit of a spice up, maybe some new style can help it out. Track number 8 is very lucky that it's in the spot that it's in, because track number 8s are the weakest in the green series, and if this one was in any other spot, it would have gotten an extremely poor ranking. But yeah, there's really not a whole lot going on with this one, with like the first 14 and last 4 seconds of it being just basically press forwards. So you have like 18 out of the 27 seconds being pretty much nothing. Extremely boring track, and I feel like I'm even being generous with my neutral rating. So we follow up the weakest track number with the strongest track number. Track number 9s are a very tough spot to be. So many tracks in this one are extremely good, and most of them are just good in general. Like track number 9 here is a perfectly fine one, but it got 12th place out of 16 spots. That is a pretty rough one, because this track is fine for what it is, gave it a plus. But bobsleigh in general, I could take or leave. Most of the tracks feel all kind of the same. You really have to do something different to really stand out. And ending off the green series here with track number 10, and honestly, this is a fine track for what it is. I just don't generally care all that much for these car switching tracks, especially as much switching as is going on in this one. I did find this one to be a little bit more enjoyable than last season's track number 10 car switching track with the snow car, so that is something. Also, I did not take the optimal lines on this one. I know that you should take the rally car through the plastic and ice at the end. At least that is the optimal lines when I made this video. But the track is fine, got a plus, and the ranking at 8. Taking a look at the scores for the green series, we can see the Spring 24 season not doing all too well here, coming all the way in 12th place. Really, this is a result of pretty much every track just being dead average. No standout tracks to give it pretty much any bump in score here. I guess the best thing you can say is that there was no really bad tracks, so nothing to really put it down any further. But yeah, a pretty much average set of tracks does not get you the best score. But with that said, hopefully we'll see some improvement here as we move on to the blue series. I thought track number 11 was a pretty good track, but of course it has a reactor boost in it, and with that reactor boost we also have a cut, and it feels like 90% of campaign tracks and like 50% of track of the day tracks at this point, if they have a reactor boost, they're probably going to have a cut. So yeah, that cut certainly did not help the ranking here, but I still thought it was a good track, gave it a plus. I'd say the only thing I would change about this track, other than the cut on it, is the very end where the camera stays in locked camera 3. Wish it would reset here as we did the drop down into the finish to help you do some speed sliding. Track number 12 is an extremely good track, and there's really not enough good stuff I can say about it. The entire track is very well done, so whoever made this one, a very nice job. And this is the first track that got a first place rating for me since the winter 23 season, so it's been over a year. It's also the first Blue Series track to even crack the top 3 since the Summer 23 season, so yeah, it's been a very long time since I thought a track was this good. And with all that said, obviously I'm gonna give this one a triple plus rating, and anything else would be a disservice to this track, and I just cannot give it enough praise. Track number 13 is the first track that I actively disliked in this campaign. I don't really find the rally car to be all that enjoyable, and the rally car with wood and road as well, it just tips over way too easily, slides way too easily, and you lose so much speed so easily. And all of those things for me, made the track pretty frustrating and pretty annoying to drive. And then you also have the weird sideways jump into the snow that I also did not care for. So this one got a pretty poor ranking for me, 13th place, as well as a minus rating. I thought track number 14 was a pretty good track, but I do wish it was more focused on the ice surface instead of kind of being this 50-50 mix of ice and everything else, because the campaign is a little bit lacking on ice. I guess the only other track in this one with ice is track number 19 with the rally car, which kind of a spoiler alert for that track. I don't really care for rally ice all that much, so I do wish this one with the stadium car was a little bit more ice focused. But still a good track nonetheless, gave it a plus, and I thought it was the 5th best track, number 14. I do feel like it could have done without the drop down into the water and little jump out of the water. I think it would have made the track a little bit better, but again, still a solid track. And finishing off the Blue Series here with track number 15, and another track that I thought was extremely good here in the Blue Series, another triple plus rating, and another first place finish. And this is the first time since the Summer 22 season, so almost been 2 years since 2 tracks in a campaign have held the first place spot. So yeah, another job well done on whoever made this track. Maybe it's the same person who made track number 12. Maybe they need to be making every single track. I don't know. But yeah, I'd say the only thing I could do without in this track and kind of this campaign in general is just the copious amount of no slides in the tracks. I don't really care for them all that much. It's a very minor thing, but I could do without them. But yeah, again, very nice track. Looking at the overall scores for the Blue Series of tracks, we can see the Spring 24 season here coming in 3rd place with a score of 56. This is just 1 point behind 2nd place of Winter 22, scoring 57, and there's a fairly large gap up to Summer 22. Needless to say, this is a pretty good score here. We had 2 tracks getting 1st place, which did greatly help. And again, we did not have 2 1st place tracks for quite some time, almost 2 years. The only thing that really did hurt this series was track number 13, which again, I just didn't really care for. So job well done in the Blue Series. Let's move on to the Red Series. I think track 16 is a decent track, but I've generally not been the biggest fan of tracks like this in general, where they give you a reactor boost and you're driving on the grass, you're driving on sand or snow, and there seems to be kind of one of these tracks per campaign at this point, and again, I've generally not been the biggest fan of them. I think this is probably the best executed one that they have done, but it still feels a little bit, unsmooth in my opinion. Lots of gear losses because of how sharp some of the turns on, and of course the reactor boost, we also have a cut in this one. It's not the biggest cut in the world, but it's still something. I got a decent ranking because the strength rating of 5 4/16 mean it's a pretty weak category, so a spot of 7 there, and my rating for it's a plus. Track number 17 kind of gives us our first true rally experience in this campaign, and I'll say that the track did drive good, and I did give it a plus rating as well, but the ranking here was not all too great, falling in the bottom half at spot number 11, so not all that fantastic of a score. I'll say that I do like the rally car a little bit more than I used to driving it in this campaign, but I'm still not at the point, and maybe I won't be at that point ever, where I find the rally car to be as good or maybe even more enjoyable than the stadium car. I'm also not really sure what could help in this regard. Maybe I just need a lot more experience with this car. Maybe the tracks could be a little bit better. I'm not really sure, but I do hope at some point I can enjoy this car more than I currently do, because I'm sure it's going to be in plenty more campaigns. I thought track number 18 was a pretty good track, and honestly, I surprised myself with how much I even like this one, because it does contain tech, and even more so, the kind of tech that I don't like with the super sharp turns. So yeah, I was a bit surprised. I was giving this one a plus plus. The ranking here was not all that great, falling right in the middle at spot number 8. Just a pretty strong category, the strongest in the Red Series. So, you know, a bit unfortunate there, but still a very enjoyable track. The part I disliked the most on this one was the very end of the track on the wood. You're going so fast in that section, and then you all of a sudden have to kind of just slam on the brakes. You have this super sharp 180-degree hairpin turn. Yeah, was not the most enjoyable section of the track, but overall, a good one. Track number 19, we got the Rally Ice track. And, you know, not the biggest fan of it. I mean, at least the rally car on ice has, you know, more control than the snow car, and that's the only kind of good thing I can say about it. I just find it extremely annoying, extremely frustrating to drive, because the difference between, you know, kind of getting in the ice slide and sliding out is next to nothing. And yeah, sliding out constantly makes it, you know, just not all that much fun for me to drive. And the final red track here, track number 20, and like I stated earlier, the wood surface for me is getting a little bit stale in general, because it only kind of has two different styles, with the wet wood style almost feeling more prominent, especially in track of the days. It feels like a vast majority of those are the wet wood style, so that is certainly not helping this out here. I still gave it a plus, and it got an above average ranking here, falling at spot number 7, so it is a decent track. I just think the charm of it, you know, falls off rather quickly. Looking at the scores for the Red Series of tracks, we can see the Spring 24 season did not do the greatest, scoring 40 points, putting it in a tie for 11th place with the Spring 21 season. Obviously, this is not the greatest score and not really where you want to be, but this is generally because I only found one track in this series to be kind of enjoyable, and that was track number 18. Everything else I definitely could have left behind and not really cared. Certainly, the score would have been better if I enjoyed Rally Car. So if you enjoy Rally Car more than me, this series, you know, you probably liked it much more than I did, but unfortunately, again, that's just not the case for me. So, not the best showing from the Red Series. Let's hope we can turn it around in the final series, the Black Series. I found track number 21 to be a pretty solid track, though it did not do the greatest in my rankings, getting 7th place. I still gave this one a plus nonetheless. Things I didn't really care for on this one are the parts immediately after the opening loop. It just felt extremely easy to slide out there. Maybe there is some consistent way to do so that I just have not discovered, or at least haven't really cared to discover, so I found that part a little annoying. And of course, this track also has wet wood, which, like I have said in previous tracks, is getting a little bit stale for me. So yeah, other than those couple of things that I mentioned, I do think this is a pretty solid track. I thought track number 22 was a pretty good track, but I do feel like it could have been a whole lot better than what it is, but it still got a 5th place and a plus for me, so that's not bad by any means. But I did not care for a couple of the wall grind parts in this track because I found the camera angle into them to be pretty poor, and it felt like more of a guessing game to get into them more than anything else. I also just don't really like the use of the wall grinds both in this track and this campaign in general. It feels like they were very much overused this time around, because generally it feels like maybe one track in a campaign will contain them, but this time it feels like 5 or so tracks have used them, maybe even more than that. I don't quite recall, but there are definitely a ton of them, and I feel like it definitely lessens the skill gap in these types of tracks, because while it does contain some skill to get into them cleanly, once you're in it, everyone is just holding the same exact input. So I did like this one, but I felt it could have used better or less of the wall grinds. I thought track number 23 was yet another extremely good track, gets yet another first place finish, as well as a triple plus rating. A very, very nice track. This one also took over a summer 22 first place position, so now it has been since the winter 22 season that 3 tracks in a campaign have held the first place position. There is one part of this track that I didn't care for, and that is the small wall grind with the rally car. I found that part to be pretty inconsistent on the exit. It seems like the car will sometimes just randomly rotate or kind of flip on the exit, giving you a very poor landing and completely screwing your run. But other than that part, I love the RPG style in the campaigns. Hope to see more of these tracks because I love them, and this one is no exception. And we continue on the trend of the Black Series so far with very good tracks, with track number 24 getting a pretty good placement at number 3, and a track rating of a triple plus. I really don't have a ton to say about this track in general because overall I think it's an extremely well-made track. I do think the grass parts, especially the jump down to it and the opening turn of that grass part itself, is a little bit annoying because it's super easy to get a bad gear up during that section. So I wish that was ironed out a little bit more because in order to avoid it, you have to jump either extremely wide to the left and then you risk hitting the left side wall, or you have to perform some releases to avoid it, which also is not the greatest thing to have to do. So other than that, the entirety of this track is pretty well made. And here we are with the final track of the campaign, track number 25, a mixed stadium and rally car track. This one didn't do too bad in my ranking, coming in at spot number 6. It is helped a little bit by the track 25s, in my opinion, being the weakest in the Black Series. So yeah, that certainly helped to get a higher placement there. I also gave this one a plus, and honestly, I was close to giving this one a plus. I think this track is the reason why I started to like Rally Car a little bit more than I did previously, and this is because of the blocks used on the track. It's not exclusively using the new rally blocks that all have these super, narrow roads, and I think this is kind of the reason why a large portion of the people who don't like the Rally Car don't like it, because when you have these super narrow roads and the super slipperiness of the Rally Car, you're constantly sliding, you're constantly crashing, and it just makes the experience a whole lot less fun. So I think going forward, if they kind of keep this in mind and make the rally car tracks a mix between both the old and the new blocks, the sentiment about it not being the most fun car to drive would kind of go away, because I know this is probably the reason why it helped me. Looking at the overall scores for the black tracks, we can see the Spring 24 season here coming in second place with a score of 63. This is only a few points behind first place, Fall 21, which scored 67. Needless to say, this is a pretty good score, and the worst scoring track in this series was track 21, getting a 7th place. So an above average score for your worst track in a series, that's pretty darn good. And with a score this high, it's hard to say I'd really change anything about this series. It's about as good as you can get. As for the score for the full season, we can see the Spring 24 season scored 246 points, and that makes it my 6th highest rated season. While this is certainly not the best spot to be, it's also definitely not the worst spot you can be, and it is definitely better than last season's Winter 24, which scored 230 points and came in 10th place. So a 16-point bump up from last season is a pretty decent margin. As far as getting higher scores go, I still have the kind of same suggestions I've had in past seasons as well, which is just make some of the white tracks harder. Like tracks 1 to 3 are so darn simple, make them more like track 4 and 5, and I think that would help a lot. Adding more length to these tracks would also add a lot more substance to them. Now that goes for some of the green tracks as well, which come under the 30-second mark. They definitely need to be at least 30 seconds in length, if not 35. As far as the other series go, I think they were pretty good for what they were. The Blue Series had 2 tracks in the number 1 spot, so that's pretty good. The Red Series was a little bit weaker, kind of middle of the road there, but none of the tracks I can say in that part were particularly bad. And then the Black Series overall did extremely well, obviously, with that second place. But that'll do it for this season's video. Of course, as always, let me know in the comments down below what you thought. Do you disagree with some of my ratings? Do you agree with some of my ratings? What is your least favorites and your favorite track in this campaign? As always, there will be a link in the description to my rankings, so if you want to see them all, feel free to look at that. Also, join my in-game club called Club Tootie. I have a couple of campaigns in there that feature my best and worst rated tracks if you want to play them. If you have not done so already, it would help out a lot if you could like this video as well as subscribe to the channel. But thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in a few months with Summer 24.